Okay, dear students, I'm beginning to record the lecture and let's continue. Last time we finished with the second module. The first module, as you remember, was the history of management. The second module of our course was connected with the internal and external environment of the company, and now we are beginning the third module of our course, linking processes. Within this module I will present you the information about decision making today. Then we will speak about the power in management. This word has a lot of meanings, but now I mean under the power влада. Ми будемо говорити про владу з вами. And then I'd like to speak with you about the communicating process, and then I'd like to speak with you about the corporative culture. So let's begin. Generally, the decision-making process is a very important process because this is like a result of managerial activity. So generally, what is the result of a managerial activity? Because managers do nothing by hands. Usually managers are only typing on their PCs, personal computers. Yes, and they need some information, and then they have to make some decisions and to say you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. So generally all the managerial processes are connected with decision-making process, and also all the functions of management are also must be implemented through decision-making process. And generally we can define the decision as the choice among several alternatives. So today we will speak about two very important things. First of all, we will speak about the way how to make these very choice, and also we will speak how to organize this process with the highest efficiency. So generally, what is the decision making? It is when we are choosing among several alternatives. There are a lot of possibilities, and actually the decision-making process can be used even in formal way. It can be used also in our usual life. For example, when you are planning to go out to visit, for example, a shop or just to have a walk, you can think what coat you should put on, for example. So you are also choosing your clothes among all your clothes in your in your storage. Generally, we have possibility to choose an alternative when we have these alternatives. So actually, if we have at least two ways of doing something, in this case it is possible for us to use the decision-making process. If we do not have alternatives, it is not possible to make decisions. But sometimes, and we will discuss it a little bit later, sometimes manager can think that he or she doesn't have alternatives, but he or she does have. It means that to see all the possible alternatives is also the very important, I think, even maybe it is the most important part of the decision-making process. Generally, there are three principal ways to choose something, and these ways we call it as type of decisions. And generally the types of decisions can be intuitive, judgmental, and rational. Воно так і перекладається українською мовою: інтуїтивні, засновані на судженнях або на попередньому досвіді, та раціональне рішення. And actually from these, even from these definitions, it is clear for you the basis of every decision-making process. In the first example, it is your intuition. It is your belief that this choice is correct. Then judgmental means that you are using your previous experience in this case. So you are thinking that if some time ago this choice was good for you, maybe it is a good idea to repeat this choice again. And rational decision means that you are analyzing external environment, you are searching for all the alternatives, you are evaluating all alternatives, and only then you are making some choice. And generally, in my example regarding the court, this decision of the type of the clothes can be made by any of these three types of decisions. How to make it in intuitive way? Okay, you can think, okay, I want to put on this blue because the weather is very good. Okay, I want to put on this very coat. It is the example of intuitive decision. Judgmental. Okay, yesterday it was almost the same weather, and I put on the blue coat, and it was completely okay for me. It was rather warm, but not extremely warm, and it wasn't cold, and actually I felt myself convenient, and I will put this very code because yesterday it was completely okay. It is the decision made at the basis of previous experience. And rational, it means that you have to check the weather forecast, you have to analyze temperature outside, then you can analyze other conditions, and having analyzed all the possible alternatives, you are choosing some code among everything, all the clause which you have. So generally, I set you the example from our usual life, but it is the same. It is completely the same with the management. So a manager can make intuitive decisions, judgmental decisions, and rational decisions in the same situation. So let's speak about it a little bit more in details. Intuitive decisions means that we are trying to use our sixth sense to make this decision. Uh, Actually, if speaking about the managerial experience, I was CEO of a company. We produced hygiene diapers for children. Maybe you listened. Maybe you know this trademark Wilkes, but we produced it in, let's say, okay, it was rather long time ago. It was in 2003 or 2004, and then our owner decided to move the production to Poland. Okay, so we had very specific form of organizing the business, and the tax office. We had the our production shop in Zmijov. It is the small city near Kharkiv. You must know it. Especially now, every citizen of Ukraine knows all the cities in Kharkiv region because of this terrible situation. So we had a shop in Zmijov, and we had an office in Kharkiv. And actually, when we had to provide a tax report, we didn't know how to do it. And I asked the tax agency in Zmijov. I asked them to help us, but they didn't know what we should do about the situation, because it was the rather specific international activity. So and then if we don't know something, so I created, actually not me personally, but we with my bookkeeper, we created this report. We created this report, and we delivered. We provided with a report to the tax agency, and finally it was no penalty when they checked us after a year. They came to our company and they checked and they say, okay, this is okay. Nobody knows how to do it, so you've done it, let it be like this. And next time, when we had to create the same report, but next year, I used my previous experience. So if we provided a report and we didn't have any penalty from the tax agency, so it is completely possible to provide the same type of the report. No, not the same type of the report, but the same type of completing of the report also next time. And also all the years after the situation, we used our experience to solve the problem. So we provided the report in the mentioned way. So judgmental decision is a decision which is based on the previous experience. And the best decision making procedure is to make the rational decision. It is the decision based on the formal procedure. So as you can see at this picture, first of all we have to identify the problem, then we have to establish the criteria for the decisions. Then we have to weight criteria, because not all the criteria are the same for us. Some criteria can be more important for us than other criteria. For example, if speaking about my first example about the court, so it could be two criteria. You can think about how fashionable you are, and then you can think about how warm it is for you, how comfortable this coat for this very weather. And generally, if speaking about me, I feel myself maybe a little bit old, but still, now I think more about how warm it is than how fashionable I would look like. And if I remember myself about 20 years ago, more than 20, 25 years ago, when I was in your age, actually it was more important for me to look more fashionable than. Okay, what does it mean? If it's not warm enough, it's okay. So we didn't have long ways in Kharkiv, so it's completely okay. But maybe I would have seen some girls, so I'd like to be fashionable. So this is like an example when the weight of criteria could be different for different decision makers. Then we have to generate alternatives, then we have to evaluate alternatives, and then we have to select the best alternative. So we have to choose only one alternative. Sometimes it is possible to choose several alternatives, okay, more than one, but usually we are speaking about only one alternative. What does it mean to choose several alternatives? Okay, it can be an example connected with the investment process. Actually, it is very rare situation when in investment process we have only one possible instrument for investments. Usually we have several instruments, and we can divide all our capital into some parts, and we can create a portfolio from different instruments, different, for example, shares or bonds or other financial instruments. So in this very case, the alternatives will be like the choice between combinations of alternatives. And generally from this explanation, I think I have persuaded you that it is better to make the rational decisions, to use these very process of decision making. But sometimes managers have to make also not only rational decisions. And the question is, why, dear students? What do you think? Okay, I'm repeating the question. Why managers are making not only rational decisions? Dear students, please think. I will provide you with the bonus points. Елизавета, what do you think? Alisa?
Because
okay, Елизавета.
Not only like worker, but like people should do choice with different maybe sides, so that it's important, and manager very я не знаю, разносторонняя profession.
Okay, because the managers are different. Actually, not because of this. Alisa, what do you think? No answer. Bogdan, what do you think? Why managers have to make not only rational decisions? Okay, silence was the answer. I will answer. Because, and it was in my examples, because of a lack of information. Actually, it is always better to make rational decisions, but to make rational decisions we have to gather the information, and it is not always possible to gather all the information you need to make the rational decisions. And actually, what does it mean, lack of information? It means that it is not possible to gather some information, or maybe it is possible to gather some information, but the cost of this information is too high. And in this very case, we have to use our intuition or our previous experience to cover these lack of information. So we are using, instead of the analysis, we are using our intuition, as it was in my example in the first situation. Then I created the report as I thought it was correct. And also we can use the previous experience. It is also possible. The decision-making process, if speaking about the rational decision, because actually the managers should use this very type of decision-making. This decision-making process has to use the following 8 steps: identification of the problem, identification of the criteria, allocation weight of or calculating weight of criteria, searching for alternatives, analysis of all the found alternatives, the selection of the alternatives, implementation of the best alternative, and then evaluation of decision effectiveness. Let's speak about every step in details. So first of all, you have to identify a problem. It means that a manager should understand that now it is possible to make a decision. So now it is possible to change something in your organization. Because if a manager doesn't see this possibility, it means that he or she doesn't have the possibility to make these decisions. So and the decision-making process also always begins with the understanding that we do have a problem, that we can change something, and for this changing we have to choose one way of growth, for example, of our company. Then, identification of criteria. I told in my example about very simple situation regarding the choosing the court. So it was only two criteria. The first was to be fashionable, and the second was that it must be warm in this court. Usually for business we are using the following criteria: costs, risks, and outcomes. And generally I'm stressing one more time that you should use not only one criteria, but you should use all the criteria, all the characteristics of the state, of the organization. Actually, little bit later, you will be delivered with the possible ways of decision making. Actually, there are a lot of special techniques. For example, analytic hierarchy process, when with the help of which we can mix several criteria. Actually, this decision making process can mix any criteria you wish, but any number criteria you wish, but actually, if you have to choose more, if you want to use more than 7 criteria, the only possible way is to mix, to divide into groups, because in one group it should be not more than 7, better not more than 6 criteria. But usually all the economic decisions are based at these very criteria: costs, risk, or outcomes. Then you have to allocate the weight for every criteria. So what criteria is more important for you, what is less important for you? In my example regarding the code, I tried to show you that for different decision makers, different criteria can have different weights. Developing alternatives. In my example, it was rather easy because actually you have only to choose some quotes for your storage, but in managerial practices this step is more difficult, because you have to understand the process, you have to analyze the external environment to understand all the possible alternatives. In my second example regarding the investments instruments, you have to analyze all the possible investment possibilities if you want to create an effective portfolio of investments. And actually, I think this step of decision making is the most important step. Because if speaking about the other steps, we can use some formal procedures, but there is no formal procedures for developing alternatives. I mean, formal procedures for how to allocate criteria, how to analyze alternatives, how to select alternatives. We have all the formal procedures for this. But to use these procedures, you must have a set of possible alternatives. Without having this set of alternatives, it's not possible to evaluate it. So this is the art of a manager to find possible ways to be evaluated later. Then you have to analyze alternatives. Actually, you are analyzing alternatives with the help of criteria. So you are using all of the criteria, and the criteria, it's like a liner, we could say, and you are measuring every possible way, every possible way of growth, for example, of your organization with the help of each criteria. So you are evaluating every alternatives several times. How many criteria were selected by you? For example, if you have 3 alternatives, and if you have 3 criteria, so it will be 9 evaluations. So you have to evaluate each from the 3 criteria with the help of you have to evaluate, each of the alternative with the help of every criteria. Okay. And actually, it is maybe rather difficult. It looks difficult to combine all the evaluations together, but there are a lot of formal procedures how to combine all the evaluations together. The easiest way is to use the analytical hierarchy process, but there are a lot of other ways. And with the help of it means what? What should you do that if we have 2 alternatives, and the criteria one is better for the first alternative but worse for the second, and vice versa, for alternative 2 by the second criteria, the second alternative is worse regarding the first criteria and is better regarding the second criteria. So then you have to use the weights of the criteria. But don't be afraid of these procedure. Don't be afraid of this procedure. There are a lot of formal techniques how to do it. So finally, you have to choose only one alternative. And every manager shouldn't forget that this alternative, this decision-making process must be implemented. So having chosen the alternative, the manager should communicate these decision to all the staff within the organization. It shouldn't be like this, that the manager having made the decision, just he or she knows about these decisions and that's all. And finally, a manager should evaluate the effectiveness and efficiency of the new state of the organization. So if, generally speaking, if the profitability is higher, we can say that the decision was completely effective, Okay, so I'm switching I will stop the recording and I am switching to the discussion.